This video is going to be delving into some dark subject matter, but it's important that we discuss what's been happening with regards to the accusations made against Rich Clark, father of Disney star Peyton Clark. Everything in this video is based upon testimonies from women who have come forward against Clark. That all being said, here's what's happened. Who is Rich Clark? Not a great deal is known about Rich Clark because perhaps deliberately he exists mostly in the shadows behind his children. His son, Peyton Clark, enjoyed the highest level of fame, but for a very brief moment of time, as he starred in Disney's short-lived series I Didn't Do It, which was on the air from 2014 to 2015. He also acted in various other smaller projects, though nothing as mainstream as his brief stint with Disney. Peyton's sister and Rich's daughter, Acacia, has managed to achieve a more consistent level of stardom, achieving great success on various social media platforms from early days on Tumblr to a YouTube channel, and now Patreon content. She currently has just shy of 2 million followers on Instagram. Getting back to Rich, his wheelhouse is photography. He advertises himself as a dance and model photographer with over 27 years of experience, owning the Mystical Models company and also working for Dance League USA. The 52-year-old lives in Los Angeles, and it's no secret that his business is primarily touted as specializing in children's modeling. The accusation: 7 women who modeled for Rich at some point in the past have come forward recently, each accusing him of grooming teenage girls and acting inappropriately in various skin-crawling ways. The suggestion is that Rich would use his reputation and fame to manipulate parents into entrusting him with their children, presenting himself as some knowledgeable expert on kids show biz industry, since his own children have seen some success in that regard. Once he'd successfully manipulated the parents into trusting him, his predatory behavior would begin, with him pressuring his teenage girl models into taking increasingly suggestive photos. It's also important to note that the vast majority of Rich's online portfolio consists of either young women or teenage girls, and it really isn't difficult to find images where the poses are questionable, being generous. Brittany Christine. Brittany Christine is the current president of EVXO Cosmetics and a co-owner of the Caress Body Shop. But back in 2013, she was 18 and dating Peyton Clark. Rich immediately took an interest in Brittany, inviting her on a road trip with him and his son soon after the couple had their first date. It was on this trip that the manipulation began, as Rich went on and on about the many big stars he'd photographed and began to suggest that Brittany had potential, that she could try out modeling. Though she'd never done anything like that before, Brittany reluctantly agreed and the trio stopped. Rich then snapped a bunch of shots, both of Brittany on her own and of she and Peyton together as a couple, including one that was apparently the pair's first kiss. During that same trip, Rich asked if she'd consider posing nude, and after convincing to put her worries at ease, he managed to convince her. He also claimed to be asexual and used this as a reason as to why Brittany had nothing to worry about. It's hard to tell what role the Clark family overall has played in enabling Rich's behavior, whether they actually knew of his dark desires, but Brittany recounts how this entire situation seemed to be perfectly normal to Peyton. With the relationship between Peyton and Brittany growing, Brittany also began to bond with the rest of the family, becoming best friends with Acacia and essentially becoming like a daughter to Rich, and that's when he started to really push things. He began to send her very uncomfortable tests, often showing her images from her shoots and commenting on how hot she looked. Next, when she expressed feeling stressed, he, in huge red flag quotation marks, joked that the solution to her problems would be to have endless sex with an older man. Plenty more, but perhaps the most disturbing of the images posted by Brittany is the one where Rich admits that he loves 14-year-olds and that he's not supposed to act on it, though he thinks it and wants it all he wants. Irene Kaya. Following Brittany's decision to go public with her interactions with Rich, model Irene Kaya was next to come forward by posting a 23-minute video on her YouTube channel in which she levies the same accusations of grooming and manipulation against Rich Clark. What happened with Irene is truly sinister. She and her mother had moved to Los Angeles after the shock death of Irene's father, leaving her still feeling emotionally vulnerable at the time. A 16-year-old aspiring actress, she required headshots and found a steal of an offer from a local photographer. Join his special modeling group for a nominal fee of $200 and receive free unlimited headshots. Of course, this was Rich Clark, and he quickly set about pushing Irene into uncomfortable situations, successfully manipulating her by offering offering reassuring claims that she should view him as like a surrogate father. Exploiting her emotional trauma, he managed to convince her that he had her best interests at heart and would never do anything to harm her. With each passing session, began to encourage her to tell her mother not to come so that he could push her into more suggestive and inappropriate poses, recommending particular type of underwear, helping her to undress, snapping pictures of her while she was changing. The horrifying list goes on. He also attempted to convince her to pose in lingerie, but she adamantly refused to do so. Many of the inappropriate photos of both Irene and Brittany ended up being sold on various mature Instagram accounts bearing multiple different names, but all ultimately linked back to Rich. Obviously, this was done without any of the girls' knowledge, the photos being sold for under $3, many of them featuring models under the age of consent. Irene was only 16 at the time of her photos. Pornographic photos. Things with Irene escalated to the point that Rich began to take what she described as pornographic photos. No longer were they in the realm of implied or so-called tasteful nudity, though it's not as if nude photos of underage teenagers could ever qualify as tasteful anyway. Rich would constantly push the idea that Irene needed to show her whole body if she wished to make it anywhere in the industry, and would direct her to spread her legs during shoots, to touch herself, or act as if she was being sexually pleasured. Despite the many concerns she had with what she was being told to do, Irene felt herself pressured to listen. She missed her birth father and was afraid of ruining the relationship she had with her manipulative surrogate father in the form of Rich. Irene finishes her story by expressing that she didn't and still hasn't told her mother about what happened, not wanting to add to the troubles that her mother was having dealing with the loss of her husband. Unnamed models. A number of other women who chose to remain anonymous have also spoken out against Rich in light of the recent accusations against him. One, who was only 14 when she worked with Clark, noted how even with her mother in attendance, he would try to push her into suggestive poses. Rich would allegedly constantly advocate for shoots of the girl in bikinis, activewear, or other forms of tight clothing, the photos clearly being more mature than would be normal for her age group. She also recalled the time that Rich explained to her that sex sells and that she should pretend to make love to the camera. On top of all this, he would constantly send her private text messages, though fortunately she knew even then to never actually reply to him. Another model corroborated the sex sells message that Rich seemed so fond of giving, and also made the claim that the second she turned 18 years of age, Rich attempted to convince her to pose nude. A third anonymous former model accused Clark of saying she had a porn star body and that he seemed obsessed with the idea of how much hotter she'd look if she lost 5 pounds. She would refuse to work with him again after their first shoot in 2013. Aftermath. Circling back to what happened with Brittany, the story came to a rather depressing end. After being constantly exposed to Rich's predatory actions, the final straw was when he asked her to be his mistress. Despite the fact that he was married to Melissa Dawson Clark and Brittany was still dating his son Peyton, but she didn't want to cause a scene, she told Peyton and asked him to try and do something to sort it out. But he wasn't keen on directly confronting his father, and horrifyingly enough, noted that something like this had happened once before with one of his ex-girlfriends. The pair broke up in 2014, but Brittany continued to live with the Clark family, and after confiding in Acacia, Brittany finally told Melissa about what Rich had done. Melissa, thankfully, saw how horrific of an action this was and kicked Rich out of the house, filing for divorce soon after. During this time, Rich sent Brittany a threatening message advising her to watch her back, but for the moment at least, she seemed to have the support of the family. That support vanished, however, when the Clark family's reputation was at stake. You see, Rich had made a habit of sending Brittany images of some of the girls he was photographing, making various creepy comments about them. Brittany wanted to warn the parents of these children, and that was enough for the entire family to turn on her, eventually kicking her out of the house. As she summed up, their reputation meant more than the safety of Rich's victims. And that's everything. We'll be watching this story as it comes to unfold, so until next time, see you soon.